what I am told is that in very recent weeks, Prince Harry has begun referring to himself and his potential position as Viceroy. Welcome to the broadcast, my dear old fruits. I've got a whisper to share with you. I've got a whisper to share with you from a very well-placed source in the know, and I've probably already semi-revealed it in the title of this video, but I wanted to share it with you as I always do, and as I always tell you when I share a whisper, take it with a pinch of salt. It's what I've been told is true. It is not what I'm saying is true, but it's pretty darn funny. It's pretty darn funny. It's comedy gold, my dear, and I certainly have every reason to believe that it is true what Harry has been running around saying that he wants in the background, behind the scenes of what we see with this new warm relationship of the King and Harry, muscling in here, muscling in there, popping up like a puppet from Fraggle Rock all over the place and trying to get in where oil don't. Yes, we will be focusing on the Harkles today, my dear. I had planned to bring a few different delights to you and also maybe a tip jar corner, but I've been pulled in all directions today, and not the exciting kind, my dear. All directions, and so much so I'm coming to you late on Sunday evening here in the Kingdom, so I'm not going to have time to do the whole jazz hands affair and put in loads of delights. We'll do that during the week. I was also going to show you this delight, which is star of the show, the vase behind me, which I found in a charity shop. It's so gorgeous, I'll just flash up a quick image. I'll show you in more detail later in the week, but what a wonderful find that was at a charity shop. I got it for a good price, and I got it specifically to help decorate the look here for you and for the frame, because it's gorgeous. But from what I can see looking in on the screen here in front of me, it doesn't really show up as spectacularly as I'd hoped, but I'll find some way to bring it into the broadcast anyway and become part of the picture you see before you, my dears. A quick tonic before we talk about the Harkles, and that is some footage of the King and Queen attending church this morning at St Mary Mag's on the Sandringham estate. Gorgeous to see them looking royal and regal, and the King looking happy as can be expected and giving a regal wave to well-wishers who came into the vicinity. But I'm afraid we must now talk about the very dodgy subject of his son. You might have seen an article pop up in the Times the other day, and I've told you before I'm not keen on the Times, the British newspaper, the Times. I never fully trust them and I don't really know what they're about. But they came out with an article saying and suggesting and inferring that there is a peace-making operation in progress at Clarence House between Charles and Harry, and everything's becoming quite warm and everything's thawing, and Charles is like open to the idea of Harry coming back into the fold in one way or the other. Well, there's that was put out there, but then the Telegraph, who I personally trust is too strong a word, but lean towards trusting a lot more than the Times, and they rebuffed the Times article by saying that according to they have spoken with, there is no way back for Harry to take on some sort of temporary role working while the King is ill and filling in as if he is some sort of Prince Regent. No, it's not going to happen. And it is my understanding. It's my understanding that due to Harry's histrionic tendencies, let's remember that he, along with wifey, have what I consider histrionic tendencies. You can see it even in the slightest, subtlest, chatty conversations that Harry has with people he likes, with journalists he likes. Even in the interview we saw this week, there is an undercurrent, an edge of this sort of anxious, defensive anger and the sort of translating of innocuous material into something, what was the word I just used? Histrionic. He's got that, my dear. And it's my understanding that when he heard that the king was ill from the king, his mind immediately went to the worst possible scenario. This is what happens. When my mother told me that she was ill with cancer, and despite the fact that I am a realist, I can be a cynicist. Is that the word? Cynic. I'm losing the plot today, my dears. I did tell you I'm being pulled in all directions, and it's left me behaving like the fuzzy end of the lollipop. I'm cynical. When my mother told me that she had a tumour, my mind immediately went to the best possible outcome. In the recesses of one's mind, obviously, you go through every scenario. Of course you do, but my attitude in that circumstance is to be a life enhancer and to think about the positives of caught it early, in good hands, getting safe treatment, with the love of all of us behind you and the support. I'm not always a glass half full person, but when it comes to those dramatic moments in life, I guess I found out that I am. Harry, on the other hand, when he's told that kind of thing, has the histrionic temperament, and he would race to the worst possible scenario. And whether or not he might want to take the throne himself one day and become King Henry IX, it doesn't mean that he wants his father to perish of cancer. One would hope. We'll give him the benefit out of the doubt there, shall we? I'm told that Harry was instructed not to come. Not to come and to hold for the sake of everybody, him included, because it would have been a total and utter waste of his time to sprint there and run on a flight. He was hell-bent on this performative operation, but not to show support to his father, as he might have even convinced himself. It was simply to shape and control the narrative. Simply to do that and assure himself that he wouldn't get bad press, and especially if his father went on to die. Harry has developed a fear that if his father was to go on to die, he would be held responsible. And as there was no time to wangle free private travel in the time scale he had, he wanted to get there and do it now. He took a very rare, humble, commercial flight. A rare moment of humble humility for Harry. It doesn't happen often, does it? Whether it's at short or long notice. Commercial flight, threadbare security, I'm told. I'm told the security was threadbare until he was met on the shores of this kingdom. And that tells you something, doesn't it? That tells you, really, what we've all known, which is that he's perfectly safe. There are certainly circumstances that he does need some protection, because he is swarmed by paparazzi at times. There's no denying it. And as a former royal, he does deserve some form of safety and security, but not the great masses of entourages and millions that he insists he should be surrounded with at all times. What has been intimated to me is that the King and Harry shared an embrace, and the embrace was a warm embrace, but Harry's hope to connect at a deeper level on this trip was not possible. Yes, one reason was the very brief encounter that it ended up being, which was even briefer than what Harry expected it to be, because of the connections, because of the awaiting helicopter, and for the times scheduled for the King's treatment, which is what the King and the King's household, and perhaps an query or two, had tried to impart upon Harry before he came to the kingdom. But Harry's hope to connect with his father was also dashed by the fact of the King's personality. Harry's ardour together with Meghan's, this is the thing they pair on. Histrionics, ardour, fiery passion, deep and meaningful conversations, what they purport to be deep and meaningful conversations, held quickly, in embracing passion, living cinematically. This is not Charles's way. He might be a romantic, but he is not a cinematique, if you will. If Harry had wanted to connect on a deeper level, then I'm afraid making his trolley dash a symbolic trip wasn't really going to impress, because he'd been told not to, and it was also viewed by the palace as performative theatre. But it would require a long walk with the monarch in nature, a long walk with his shepherd's crook or whatever it is, out in nature, rambling. This is how the king gets to the crux of his problems and discusses intimate matters with his members of the family. It's not in a 5-minute quick in and out, unless we're talking about the Queen. But, we're talking about Harry, and, do some hedge building with your father. Get your schedule more in order so that you could spend proper quality time with the king, and then you might get to the root of some problems. But none of this instant stupidity. Because it reeks of stupidity. Harry wanted to impress, first and foremost, the press. Secondly, I do believe that he wanted to impress his father, because he wants a foot in. He wants a foot in, and he wants to try and hedge his bets. And lastly, and this is one that is more subconscious, he does in some ways want to impress himself and the love that somewhere, the warped love that he has for his father, he wants to appease. Because despite the layers of wickedness that has been heaped upon it, somewhere deep down inside, there is still a child that has some sort of love for his father and wishes to be by his side. So there are at least three layers going on here. And that is the order that I see them in appearing. I don't know about you. But any which way to muscle in on royalty. We have the rebrand to Sussex and making all that as official as possible. We have the Invictus posturing as ambassador. He wants to be seen as an ambassador, not just greeting the people of Canada, but also the dignitaries, the servicemen, the military, and the First Nation representatives. He is keen to return in some capacity, and this is absolutely what I have been told by somebody very much in the know. I'm told that Harry specifically would love to be involved with Canada in some respect, as a special envoy, as a royal envoy. What I am told is that in very recent weeks, Prince Harry has begun referring to himself and his potential position as Viceroy. As Viceroy. Yes, you heard me correct. Whether Viceroy of Canada, I do not know, or of America, or Montecito, you tell me, my dear. But this is a word that Harry and even some surrounding members of his camp, the Harkle camp, have been using and bandying about. If you believe what I have been told, I happen to believe it. But I'm leaving that up to you, my dear. For legal reasons, I must state that it could possibly not be true, but I have been told that this is a word that has been bubbling up all around Montecito and on the line, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, on the line to those on these shores. Viceroy. Viceroy Harry. And I'll come back to that in just a minute, but just in case you didn't know, which I'm sure you do by now, Harry held talks with a First Nations chief while he was in Canada about the Crown. And this was about the Crown's historic commitment to Canada's Indigenous people. Why was he having discussions with a First Nation chief about the Crown's historic commitment to Canada's Indigenous people? This is why the whispers that I've been hearing are lining up with what I see before me. It's evidencing itself. Harry said, "Our collective journey through truth and reconciliation is an important one for us all." And he spoke of his hope that we can depart and return as friends. Harry, my dear boy, the King of Canada is your father, and the King of Canada is at the helm of those sensitive discussions that are ongoing. You might remember him having them with the Yellowknives, for example, the people of the Yellowknives. He visited Canada 2 years ago when he was Prince of Wales with the Duchess of Cornwall as she was, and they are set to return at some point. It was actually mooted for this year. Originally the whispers were May this year, another trip to Canada. Then, of course, there were a few social media rumblings and in the press about possible potential protests against the King and Queen. And my understanding, what I have further been told behind the scenes, is that Harry obviously got wind of all of this, and he's got his eye on Canada, especially for next year, for Invictus. And he has been angling to smooth the way. And he's been dropping big hints. He's been dropping big hints behind the scenes. And what's he received? Even, by the way, I should say, in the direction of William's household. Whether directly or indirectly or through various channels that I can't go into, even not just to Charles, but appealing to William, because it is William is the one that he's really got to impress. Charles knows what's what with Harry, but he has the tender heart of a loving father. William, no. William, not to be messed with. Not to say he doesn't have a tender heart, but that is second place to his lion heart. Where was I? And the Princess Royal, if you remember. And this drove me crazy when I made these notes. The Princess Royal made that trip to Canada in May last year. It's almost coming up to a year ago. In my mind, that was about 4 or 5 months ago. Well, it's longer than that. She made that trip. She did fabulously. Got wonderful comments from Canadians here on the channel. And she did it royally. You know, there was no sordid mess surrounding it. No tawdry cabaret. But back to the subject of Viceroy, which is how Harry apparently wants to reimagine himself. Not using that specific word, but taking on the role of a special envoy, and that is the word that I'm told he is using behind the scenes to illustrate the kind of impact that he wants to have on a country such as Canada, and maybe even, I'm going to whisper it, Australia. I'm whispering that one even quieter, but up. Harry puts the vice in Roy, doesn't he, that boy? If you are not aware of the etymology of the word viceroy, vice means in the place of. Roy comes from the antiquated French of roi, king, in place of the king. And it's not a noble rank, it is a position created by royal appointment. It's one who represents a king or a queen and rules for him or her in another country. Rules for him or her in another country. And we haven't seen the likes of a viceroy for very many decades now. They were numbered many at one point in history, even in America. Or the Americas, perhaps I should say. We're going back centuries, but during the Spanish colonization, all over the place, viceroys were, over large administrative territories. They were known as viceroyalties. And the last viceroy representing this empire was, of course, the Viceroy of India, Lord Mountbatten, Harry's namesake, appointed by King George VI as the first Governor-General of India. Together with Meghan, Harry and Meghan could be Vice and Roy, Viceroy, couldn't they? Or Siegfried and Roy. The Viceroy of North America, or all America, if Harry had his own way. Or if the House of Wales was to fall, perish the thought, in grief, and was to crumble, then you have the Viceroy of Montecito ready to step in with his Vice-Regina, because Meghan would be Vice-Regina. That's something to think about, isn't it? And get your mind boggling over. The Viceroy and the Vice-Regina of Sussex. The imagery is far too much. Actually, I'm being cheeky. I don't think there is such a thing as a Vice-Regina, but it's quite a delicious word, especially for Meghan, isn't it? The word would actually be Vicereine. Viceroy and Vicereine, or Viceregal Consort. One of the chiefs of the First Nations that Harry met up with in Canada said that while a lot of politicians say it and don't mean it, Prince Harry had offered to resume discussions next year. Resume discussions? In what capacity? Harry, you are not a viceroy. You are a not very nice boy. Get it? Got it? Good. Well, we are told that reconciliation and respectful relationships with Indigenous people are at the forefront of the Invictus campaign, so that gives Harry an excuse to hang around these other characters. Then that's all very nice. Yes, that is all very nice and very good, but what exactly is your role, Harry, in reconciliation? And apart from impressing a few leaders and councillors, how is this actually impacting real, actual Indigenous people and peoples and their lives? That's what I'm curious to know, in actuality. Because I have many comments. You'll be surprised how many comments I get from the Indigenous people, not just from North America and Canada, but all over the globe. But while we're speaking on this, lots of comments are coming to my mind because I find them very interesting. And they make up many here in the fruit basket. If Harry and Meghan and Archibald and Invictus are promoting their traditions and their art and their knowledge, and then I have no problem if these chiefs say that they're doing something wonderful for bringing it to public attention. What I don't appreciate is the sense of them glorifying themselves as they do it. It's not as if they behave royally, which is making it about the people rather than them, is it? However, I must, in fairness and in balance, and because I'm not going to talk down to you as if you're in the cheap seats, as if we're all in some echo chamber where there's no nuance and no black and white, I will praise where praise is due, as I always do. So I will relay the comments from the chief of those First Nations who said that the Invictus planning for this large sporting event compared very favourably to events such as the 2010 Olympics that felt like an afterthought. And he was full of praise for them and said that Harry and Meghan had come at the very beginning to ask if we would support them, and they'd said yes right away, and said now we're all working together side by side. I look forward to working with Harry so we can have these discussions. The general public needs to know more about what truly happened, and the people with the louder voices are the ones that can help us make those changes. Nice sentiments, but the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And to be quite honest, rather than hearing from these leaders of First Nations, I would rather hear from the Indigenous people of these regions and their thoughts. Either way, I would like a variety of thought, whether you think it's going to have any impact, if it's having any impact, or if it's all sophistry. or whether it just goes under the radar in most of Canada. Now, as for the televised interview that took place on, what was it, Good Morning America or ABC, whatever it was, well, it was all word salad, wasn't it? And to be quite honest, it was boring. But when he was asked about the King's health, he said, "That stays between me and him. That stays between me and him." Wow. Wow, Harry. Something sacred. You know, Harold, you had no problem telling us all about your brother's circumcision, did you? The unsheathing of that member, which, by the way, is stupidly and archaically unnecessary. It's certainly not a traditional English, British or Church of England practice. There's absolutely no reason for it, regardless of the fact that it appears to be a tradition in the royal family. That is not a detail that should ever have been made public by association through the state of your member, Harry. Only those of us in the know needed to have that information harboured, as some of us did. The rest of the world needed not be privy to such information. It's vulgar. Also telling us about Pa's back trouble, how Pa does headstands to alleviate his back trouble, and about Pa's prayers every night, and about Pa's wife's scheming, and about Pa's beloved daughter-in-law's frigidity. All of this was food for the masses, wasn't it, my dear? That was meat to throw to the piranhas. But finally, when you're asked about his health, "Oh no, that stays between me and him," and the shield goes up, "How dare you be so impertinent?" Well, multiple sources have come forward to share with Page 6 that Harry and Meghan have been working towards a reconciliation with the royal family. And, by the way, this is all under the advice of Ari Emanuel and WME, because it became apparent that they couldn't make it on their own. They need the Royal Association, which all of us could see clearly. They had the arrogance to think they didn't, you see. They thought that they could begin off by using the Royal Association as a platform and get all the big bucks in from the book and the documentary, because they're the big sellers, aren't they? And they thought that it would bring them so much fancy goodwill and stardust and celebrity and their own version of royalty. They thought that would be enough to set them on a trajectory for life, to spend and live as billionaires. Whereas what they found out, my dear, is that no, it was like a deep dive. Up you go and then plummet into the pool and a great big belly flop, my dear. And all of a sudden you're just on a meagre multimillionaires situation and multimillionaires lifestyle. Or millionaires lifestyle, but not up there with the big boys. And that is when we all realised slowly that they needed to change tack if they wanted success. They were too arrogant to do so until they had to resort to taking advice from Ari Emanuel and WME. And that's when the change was made, and it seems like they've been forced into it, because the big bucks have been falling. Archetypes dumped. Pearl dumped. Meet me at Ricky Lake? We'll see, won't we? We'll see, but there are already whispers emanating about that affair. Oh, meet me at the lake. There is a lot of chatter about that, and there is a lot of chatter about Netflix and what's been going on. And I will bring to you quite a few highlights from a recent article by Alison Borshoff, because it is worth reiterating a few passages from her article. It's interesting. She says, "I'm told by well-placed sources with knowledge of the Netflix deal that the association has been disappointing all round, with Harry and Meghan drawing a relatively meagre amount from the streamer, thought to be as little as $20 million for them personally all in." And to place that in context, of course, $20 million is an awful lot of money. But we're putting that in context of the rumoured $100 million from September 2020 when the deal was announced, and it was announced as a multi-year deal, and 100 million was a figure that was bandied about by the press. It emerged from somewhere. I'm not saying they put it out personally, but this was the rumour. What we're told is that it was now thought to have been as little as 20 million for them personally. And the Harry and Meghan documentary performed very well for Netflix, but in the same high dive affair, it was a one-trick pony, and it's all they wanted from Harry and Meghan, and it's all they will continue to want. They want more dirt. They want more drama associated with the royal family. Everything else they do is boring. That's the best word for it, my lover. Boring, boring, boring. Yawnsville, Yawnsville, Yawnsville. There's another good word. So it's back to royalty. It's back to royalty. Or they don't have a career. She continues in this article. What's more, the expectation in Hollywood is that both parties will break the deal as soon as it is contractually viable, which will mean a divorce in September this year or next. We've heard various intentions for Harry's documentary about Africa to come out via Netflix. Harry in Africa. We've heard about a feminist retelling of Miss Havisham's story from Great Expectations. You leave Dickens alone, my dear. You leave my Dickens alone. Some sort of TV drama that Meghan's got behind. And, of course, Meet Me at the Lake. Or Meet Me in St. Louis, Meet Me at Prince Louis, or Meet Me on the Make, however you want to dress it up, my dear. But the article confirms what I have been telling you, and I'm sure others have been telling you. A source with knowledge of the situation says that essentially the Netflix deal is a dead duck. The whole arrangement was basically the trade-off for Netflix getting the Harry and Meghan documentary. It was never the huge payday that the press reported. The $100 million number was always a newspaper figure. It's thought they got a small fraction of that number up front, and everything from there on is largely contingent on performance. The fact is that Archewell has been relatively inactive so far. Rather than a massive lump sum, the deal consisted of a multi-year commitment from Netflix to cover the overheads of Archewell, said to be about $3 million a year, of which Harry and Meghan keep a small portion of personally. And most of that is being spent on overheads and development. And with regards to Meet Me at the Lake, you might remember when all this emerged, there were reports that Netflix themselves had stumped up the $1 million for the rights rather than Archewell taking the hit for it. And they're supposed to be the production company involved, and this is most unusual. And it goes on to show, this article suggests, that it is a reflection, a poor reflection of the coffers of Archewell and its production arm. The coffers seem to be rather dry and coughed out. We are told that the most lucrative payday by far would have been 20 million for Harry and Meghan and their production fee for Harry and Meghan the documentary. 20 million to cover that production fee and to Harry and Meghan personally, so a wonderful payday for them then, because it was like the book, just drama, wasn't it? Dirty linen, the consumption of dirty linen. That would have been the most lucrative, but since then it's been nonsense after nonsense, an empty shell after empty shell, and there's been turbulence at the executive level at Archewell. And a source told Alison Borshoff, told her, I know for a fact that Netflix are annoyed to be advancing several $1 million a year of overhead to a company that can't seem to retain more than a handful of staff and that has almost no day-to-day visibility around town. That wasn't what Netflix were pitched. Netflix are disappointed and dismayed from what I hear. So we'll certainly be seeing more books on the way, won't we? Don't think we won't be seeing more books trotted out. because Harry made $12 million by a conservative estimate, a very conservative estimate, on the book. 2 for the price of 1, extra copies turning up through your letterbox. Even considering all of that conservative estimates, there's no denying that it's sold like hotcakes, my dears. Some people still try to deny this. It still was an exceptional success and made a fair amount of money for the prince. And he knows he can always come back with a part 2 and a part 3 and a 4 if he wants a few bits of extra shrapnel. A few more Judas coins to match the 12 he's already earned. As for their new paramour, Paramount, in the form of Brian Robbins, flying them all over the world and to Jamaica for premieres, well, they might be cozying up to Paramount. Paramount is being sold. It's in the process of being sold. And I can't say what Mr. Robbins' position will be, but the whispers are that there will potentially and probably be a new head at Paramore. So Netflix out, the old Paramore takes a power dive, and who are you left with? Lemons. And what do you do with them? Make lemonade. Lemons from the larder, squeeze them harder. What do you got left? Lemonade. There we are, my dear, that's what you're going to see. In this interview on the slopes, Harry was on his usual form. Worthy words, a lot of virtue signalling, munching on word salad. But it was harmless enough. It was harmless enough. It was fine. It was fine. But then, of course, he had to be asked, didn't he, about his royal past. It had to come up into conversation. He couldn't do one interview without dodging it. And don't think that he couldn't dodge it if he wanted to. He could easily have briefed behind the scenes. We're not going there. Okay, keep the focus. Keep the focus on the people. As Camilla, we have been told, and as I relayed to you last week, told by somebody that works with her on the ladies' refuges, and even 8 years ago she was telling this lady in private, just do what you will, but make it about them, and don't make the press story about me. The press will do what they will, but if only Harry could learn from that stepmother that he disparages so. But he doesn't. He doesn't learn. He could have briefed them. Don't go there, don't go there. But he didn't, because he knew that that was what was going to garner attention. These things are prearranged, you understand. The interviewer asks Harry, are you competitive? It was the longest in Christendom, my dears, even bearing in mind my meditations. It was the longest I've ever heard. Are you competitive, Harry? Sometimes. Depends on what it is. That's a Freudian slip for yes. How did you get the news that the king was ill? I spoke to him. And what did you do next? I jumped on a plane and went to see him as soon as I could. Shaping the narrative right in there, right in there. We all know what he did. We all know what was said. Harry, I've got cancer. I'm coming, Daddy. I'm coming on a plane. Please, inform the papers. Royal Bugler of Montecito. Inform Omid Scobie and the National Enquirer that I'm jumping on a jet as we speak. And it's commercial. I've got to get there for Daddy. And for Pa. Oh. Where was I? Can't see a thing I've written. Yeah, shaping the narrative, getting the story across of what a devoted son he is. Really? Your name's not William. How was that visit for you emotionally? Another huge He said, look, I love my family. The fact that I was able to go on a plane and see him and spend my time with him and spend any time with him, I'm grateful for that. Wow, wow. Is he aiming for an Oscar too? Like the wife? Is he aiming for an Oscar too? The last 4 years never happened. It was all a dream. It was all a Bobby Ewing moment, as somebody put in my comments recently with regards to something or other. All a Bobby Ewing moment. The King or Big Willie or you are going to be taking a shower one morning, getting those suds into your hair, and you're going to turn around and you're going to find that it's all been one great big dream, and that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are living humbly in South Africa, keeping their head down, getting on with the job, being inspired by the late Queen and Princess Anne, and taking the occasional sojourn to other Commonwealth realms to spread goodwill. And it's all harmony. And 4 years of tawdry cabaret was just a mirage. Not! Who do you think you're trying to kid, boy? We got it all up here. Ask your friend they're elephants. We never forget. So tie a knot in your own trunk, lover boy. He loves his family, he says he's grateful for all of this. What's your outlook on his health? That stays between me and him. That stays between... How dare you? How dare you? And he has the temerity to talk about the strength of the family unit coming together. The strength of the family unit. I have my own family as well, as we all do. Then, he tells us, I've got other trips planned, back and forth across the kingdom, and he's going to nip in and out there during those trips. Great, great. And I notice he gets very prickly at all the generic questions. And granted, they are inane, stupid, dumb questions that you get on a channel like this. But he knows the game. Any celebrity or any royal will tell you that is part of what you have to put up with in the public eye if you're going to invite and accept interviews. But he still can't shake away the defensive, defiant sort of arrogance, and gets irritated on questions of fatherhood. You know, you can see it bubbling behind the surface, that red rage. They are easy enough questions to deflect and reflect and avoid without so much snot and trout on display and without so much chagrin. It's entirely unnecessary, but he enjoys it, which is why he allows himself to get vexed. This is another characteristic that they both share. When they seem vexed and highbrow-falutin, they're really enjoying it under the surface. It makes them live. Do you see what I mean, my dear? It gives them life. It gives them life to face this challenge. I saw that very evidently during the Harry and Meghan documentary. It was Meghan stewing on something, I think, during the occasion when texts of support were coming through from Beyonce or whatever it was, or things were coming in from William. She was getting all ruffled about something or other, and you just saw a smidgen of the real Rachel behind the scenes. What we don't see when the cameras are turned off. It was there. Just a little smidge, but you saw it. The way that they feed off of each other. Like ghouls, like dementors. Gobbling up the drama. Drama. Oh, it tastes delicious. Oh, yum-a-dum-dums. Oh, give me some more of that drama. We're craving it. We're a glutton for drama. Perhaps gluttony would be one of the 7 sins that they commit so very frequently. And would you consider becoming a citizen, Harry? He has asked. Yes, he says. Yes, I have considered it. Not a high priority. Probably because you're concerned that you'll be giving away all kinds of rights to your ex-royal position. Bit nervous to do that, are you, my dear? Even though America's your new home. And then he spouts off about, the mission continues. This is one of his sound bites, isn't it? The mission continues. Move over, Tom Cruise. Move over, Tommy boy. We've got Mission Possible here with me. And I've always lived a life of service, he tells us. I've always lived a life of service. Keeps banging on about that in the interview. Well, you're supposed to have served the late Queen too, so that she could have support serving us and the kingdom and the country. Well, where is your support, your service to her as Commander-in-Chief? Where is your support to the existing Commander-in-Chief, King Charles III? I've seen no evidence of it. Do you, my dears? I see no evidence of it, but we can keep looking, can't we, my dears? And we can keep an eye on what progresses thenceforth. We'll do that. We'll do that. Thank you for sharing a lovely Sunday moment with me. And I look forward to seeing you in the next broadcast. Have a fabulous evening. Toodaloo, my dears. Take care. Leave me a lovely comment. Toodle pip.